heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
Worth it because she believes the sanctions are working.
In November 1997, former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark headed a delegation of the International Action Center on his 7th trip to Iraq to investigate the continued effects of the United Nations sanctions on the population. We were shocked by what we saw, an almost total absence of medicines, medical supplies, and spare parts for the equipment. Despite the heroic efforts of medical personnel, babies, children, and the chronically ill continued to die in vast numbers. The United States government claims that Saddam Hussein is to blame for the crisis. What is the real cause of the suffering? The sanctions. They are an extension of the 1991 United States war against Iraq. The goal was to cripple Iraq's infrastructure and make civilian life unsustainable.
We demonstrated the capacity of technology to cripple a country without ever setting foot on it in the Persian Gulf. It's important to recognize that because it goes hand in hand with the sanctions. When we merely say that we flew 110,000 aerial sorties in 42 days, one every 30 seconds on the average, 24 hours a day, we ignore what we really did.
Officials said the death toll was now 288, with many more to come. The trucks kept filling up and driving away, past waiting relatives who knew they might never be able to identify the bodies of their loved ones. The community of Almeria filled one of the first of many funerals with gunfire in sign of grief and fury, and with angry words aimed through foreign journalists. "My mother, she's gone," shouted this young man. This woman asked, "Could not all your modern technology tell you that there were children and women here?" Bill Blakemore, ABC News, in the Almeria district of Baghdad.
We destroyed every silo for grain or anything else storing food in the whole country. We destroyed all the storage and processing of food plants throughout the country. Even dates, the world's biggest exporter of dates. Famous processing and packaging plants in Baghdad, deliberately destroyed. We didn't want them to be able to feed themselves for a long, long time. We're all aware of the famous little powdered milk plant.
The United States government says that in this factory here you are making chemical weapons. Is that true?
No, that's not true. They are lying, because this is milk for children. This powder, milk of children.
Nothing else was made, only this in the factory?
Yes, and you can see it yourself.
With the only factory in the Middle East to produce powdered milk, they were producing about 17% of their powdered milk requirements. We destroyed that, cut off all the milk. The malnutrition of the mothers immediately jeopardized all of the infants. 70% of the pregnant women, even today in Iraq, suffer anemia.
The death rate for children has soared compared to 1989, the last year before sanctions. One of the biggest causes of death in Iraqi children today is diarrhea and dysentery due to the untreated drinking water. Iraq's water purification plants were heavily bombed in the war, and many that were repaired have broken down. The United Nations bans the import of spare parts and chlorine into Iraq to purify water. We saw the effects of this policy in the hospitals.
This is the second attack of acute bloody diarrhea. anemic dysentery. Most of them are due to contamination of water. He is malnourished, anemic, underweight with a developmental delay.
Diarrhea and vomiting. Do you have tap water there? No.
You see, the conditions of these children shouldn't happen anywhere, and it's caused by the sanctions the United States government insists upon.
The U.S. military used 800 tons of depleted uranium weapons in the war, causing a rise in cancers among the population.
Our involvement in the Gulf is not transitory. It predated Saddam Hussein's aggression and will survive it. Long after all our troops come home, there will be a lasting role for the United States in assisting the nations of the Persian Gulf.
There are those that would like to lift the sanctions. I am not among them.
Our main objective is lifting the sanctions, which has been very, very cruel on our people.
Why do you think Americans want to keep the sanctions?
That's their policy.
Why do you think?
Ask them. That's their policy. It's against the will of the international community. It's against the will of many other countries. I think they are making profits from that. But I don't want to make accusations.
Financial profits?
Yes.
Like how?
Who is selling oil instead of Iraq? Iraq had a share in the oil market. That share was stopped by the sanctions. Who is selling that? Who? They know very well that Saudi Arabia jumped from 5 million barrels a day to 8 million barrels a day. 3 million barrels, Iraq's share, have been added to the share of Saudi Arabia.
And we would take this to a war front to protect Saudi Arabia's making more money?
No, you are sharing that money. Everybody knows that.
I want to tell you some things. What the crime the Iraqi children were done to receive this punishment?
What crime?
What a crime.
Your brothers in Iraq, the massacres, the threats on your brothers in Iraq, the embargo on them, may Allah be with them. 6,000 of your children over there every month. 6,000 of your children over there every month die because of the terrorist hand. 6,000, may Allah be with them. Not only do they let them die an easy death, they also have threats coming down upon them. We're going to bomb you. Let them die an easy death. Iraq is going down. They're dying. No nutrition, no food. A simple needle that keeps your son alive when he's a young boy is what causes the masses of kids in Iraq to die, and no heart. The kuffar have no heart over your brothers. The Prophet prophesied this. He said in a hadith narrated by Jabir ibn Abdullah in Sahih Muslim. Look how we have this stuff. The Prophet Jabir says the story, but when Jabir says the story, it has the same hukum as though the Prophet ﷺ said it. Jabir ibn Abdullah said there shall become a day when Iraq will have an embargo on it, no qafiz or no dirham will enter upon it. What does this mean? يوشك أن يأتي يوم على العراق لا يجبى إليه دينار ولا قفيز. What's this hadith mean? Look how precisely worded it is. It's so precisely worded, so no one will come and say, you know what? You guys are lying. You got a mistake in the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, it's about to happen. One day, the Iraq will have an embargo on it where nothing will be able to enter. However, when he said nothing will be able to enter, he said qafiz. You know what qafiz is? What you carry the food in it. Why did he say qafiz and he said there will be no food? It's important to know this. First of all, he said it in a way that overall there's going to be an embargo. Okay. However, that embargo is going to be broken because Iraq now has a relationship with Syria, secret, and with Jordan, and with Iran. They have secret relationships. So that embargo, the way the Prophet worded it, yushiku, meaning it's not a complete embargo. They're going to be able to get something from other countries. Okay, the Prophet ﷺ said, qafiz, meaning qafiz, there's not enough food for you to carry the food. There's going to be food. They're not going to die totally out of food. But it's not going to be so great that you can carry the food. It's going to be a little bit of food just to keep them alive, or less than that, but something that they can't carry. And look what's more stunning in the hadith. The people around Jabir said, who's the one who's going to do this? Jabir ibn Abdullah says, Al-Ajam. You know what Al-Ajam means? The non-Arab. This hadith is in Muslim. Look how uniquely, this is half the hadith, the other half, wait up. He says Al-Ajam. Go back, do some research, and look it up. Who's the one who did the embargo on Iraq? Al-Ajam is an Arabic term to say about any non-Arab. Any non-Arab. If you look at the masses of the world today, all the Arabic people are 100% against the embargo. Because the Prophet said the Ajam are 100% against. You may find exceptions, believe there's exceptions. However, we don't make rules based on exceptions. The masses of the Arabic world are 100. Go to Egypt. Wallahi, I've seen sceneries in Egypt where they bring some people not even religious. They don't even know what Islam is. There's no hijab, there's nothing. And they ask them, what do you think about the embargo? This is an oppressive embargo. So the Prophet ﷺ said, the Ajam, look who signed the embargo on Iraq. It happened about 9 years ago. The 5 permanent council members in the United Nations, as you know, United States, Russia, France, Great Britain, China. 5 permanent members in the United Nations. And as you know, if you know how the United Nations works, there's one that rotates. That one who rotated at the time they did the embargo on Iraq was Yemen. Yemen. 5 non-Arabic countries signed the embargo on Iraq. One, Yemen, refused to do it. Because the Prophet ﷺ said it's the Ajam who are the ones who are going to cause the embargo. In huwa illa wahyun yuha. Here's a revelation from Allah. Look at the second part of the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, and there's also going to be an embargo on Syria. And they're not going to have, the way it's worded, they're not going to have a dinar wala mudi. La dinara wala mudi. Different from how the Prophet ﷺ said about Iraq. Why did he say it differently? Because the embargo on Syria, as the Prophet ﷺ said, is the lesser one than that's going to be on Iraq. Not only that, they asked, who's the one who's going to cause the embargo on Syria? You know what he said? A room. What does a room mean? There's no room today. What's meant by Rome, according to all scholars, is Europe and the United States. Unanimously. Today the scholars consider the Rome, or prophecies of the Prophet ﷺ about Rome, is the United States and Europe. Who's the one today who's after an embargo on Syria? Who? All of the United States. No other country wants an embargo on Syria. It's a neutral country. They claim they have terrorists in there. So it's the United States and Europe who are after embargo on Syria. Prophecies of the Prophet ﷺ. This is the sad part of the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, Jabir said, the Prophet ﷺ said, silent. And then he said, and this is the good news, see that both things happened, or nearly happened now. The last part of the hadith is yet to happen, yet it's the good news. The Prophet ﷺ sat silent, and then he said, and at that time, there's going to come a Khalifa who will be so just that he doesn't count wealth. He doesn't count it. He's going to be so rich, so much justice, that he carries it by the loads. The wealth, the gold, the jewelry is by the load, not counting it. When you're poor, you count it single by single. But when you're rich, he says you carry it by the load. And that's what's awaited. And as you've seen, 3 parts of the hadith. One concerns Iraq, one concerns Syria, and one concerns something that is going to happen, inshallah, about a Khalifa. The first 2 nearly happened. The last one is what's awaited, the great news of a just Khalifa to come.
Sanctions are one of the coercive measures that the Security Council has at its disposal under Chapter 7. That is to say, it is part of this whole range of measures, starting from declaration to the press, resolution. Then in the end, at the very end of that scale, you will have the military action. Sanctions are the measure just short of military action. And obviously, they hurt. They are like a military measure. They're like a military action.
But who do they hurt?
Well, this is, of course, the problem.
This is the key. Isn't this the key point? Who they hurt?
With military action, too, you have the eternal problem of collateral damage.
You have an entire nation that is collateral damage here. Forgive me for interrupting, but let me just say this. Every UN agency dealing with health, food, agriculture and children have reported repeatedly that tens of thousands of the most vulnerable in the society have died and are suffering as a result of sanctions. And do you seriously call that collateral damage?
No, I didn't call it collateral damage.
Well, you're drawing a comparison there.
No, I'm saying that military action has collateral damage. Sanctions are short of military action, but they also have, of course, effects that one doesn't want. And I agree with you that we have to study this further and more extensively to see how we can improve the situation without letting the regime off the hook with regard to the excessive documented interest of the government of Iraq for weapons of mass destruction.
Well, why aren't there sanctions on Israel, which has the only nuclear weapons in the Middle East?
Well, Israel is a country that has been surrounded by countries that try to wipe it out. It's not exactly the same situation.
But it has nuclear weapons.
Well, yes, but we have not yet attacked or put sanctions on every country that...
it attacks Lebanon almost every day of the week. Well, I think these are important. Why aren't there sanctions on Turkey, which has displaced something like 3 million Kurds and caused the deaths of perhaps 30,000 Kurds? Why aren't there sanctions on Turkey?
Yeah. Well, there are many countries that do things that we are not happy with, but this is a situation which has come into being due to the invasion of Kuwait, and that is the explanation of it.
There are some scholars who think that the events in Iraq are the prelude to the Al-Malahim. Because it starts with the embargo on Iraq and then moves to Asham, and then you get into this series of battles called Al-Malahim. But Allah Alam, that's all speculation. We don't know. However, what is happening in Iraq now should be of concern to every Muslim, because these could be some very difficult and trying times on the Ummah. Don't think that it's going to be a walk in the park. Every generation goes through some calamity. It happens to every generation. But sometimes you are on the sidelines and somebody else is playing the roles. With our forefathers, they witnessed World War I, but they were not the key players. They were sitting on the sidelines and watching the events. And then World War II happened, and the generation before us witnessed that, but they were not directly influenced by it. However, now we are entering into a stage where the Muslims are the key players. Before they used to be on the sidelines, now they're sitting in the front row. Before they used to be watching, now they are the ones who are acting and reacting. Therefore, whatever events happen in the future will affect us directly, because the future events are going to be dealing with the Muslim Ummah. Now the center of all of the events is Muslim land. If you are old enough to remember the news 15 years ago or 20 years ago, you would rarely hear anything about Islam and Muslims on the news. Now, from the beginning to the end, one way or another, it's dealing with Muslims. Good or bad. But you are now the center of events. Therefore, whatever will happen will affect you. Now, if the speculation is true, that the Muslims are getting into a very critical stage in their history, a stage that will precede the second golden age of Muslims, then you absolutely want to make sure that you are right in there and you're not sitting on the sidelines. Why? What makes the Sahaba special? What makes the Sahaba special is that they are the generation who established Islam. At-Tabi'in came and everything was already ready for them. So At-Tabi'in could afford to give their life to studying, to teaching. The Sahaba didn't have that luxury. The Sahaba were going from one battle to another, from one difficulty to another. What makes the Sahaba special is that they were a minority that were going against the stream. While At-Tabi'in were going with the stream. The Sahaba were going against the whole world. Everything was against them. Times came when one of them would have fear to go out of their house, like what happened during the siege of Al-Khandaq. What made the Sahaba special is that they were the ones who constructed Islam. They built it. Now that building has been demolished. So there is a chance for another generation to come to build it again. So rather than having Islam come to you ready, you have a chance of being among the generation that will be the most similar to a Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in a hadith, يخرج من عدن أبين 12,000 ينصر الله بهم الدين هم خير من بيني وبينهم. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in Musnad Imam Ahmad that an army of 12,000 will leave from Aden, Abyan in Yemen. They're 12,000. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says they are the best people between me and them. So throughout the centuries of Islam, these will be the second best after Sahaba radiallahu anhum. So you can see that this generation will be special. They will be the best of the ummah. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Ummati kal-matar, la tadri al-khayru fi awwaliha wa akhirih." My ummah is like rain. You don't know where the big outburst will be, whether it's in the beginning or the end. This is an ummah that starts with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and ends with Isa alayhi salam. So if you will have a chance to participate, be either yourself or prepare your children, if you or the generation following you will be part of those golden years, you want to make sure that you're right in there, right in the arena. You don't want to be on the sidelines watching the news. Therefore, it's very important for Muslims today, especially the youth, prepare yourselves for the future. Be ready for whatever sacrifices Allah will ask from you. You're not living in regular or normal time. This is a very unique era. And it is going to be either you or the generation following you who will participate in these major events. There is a lot of ajr that will be handed out. Make sure that you get part of it. Make sure that you get your slice of the pie. What a waste if these events happen and you're not participating. You get a chance to live in that golden era and then you're sitting on the sidelines. Just think about how much regret the Sahaba who became Muslim late had, that they did not join early on. They used to wish that they became Muslim even a day earlier. Now again, this is all speculation, but even if there's a 1% possibility that this would happen, you don't want to risk it. And what do you need for those days? What you would need are two elements. Number one, thabat, and number two, tadhiyah. Number one, steadfastness. You have to be firm like a mountain. Nothing changes you. Your iman has to be strong with deep roots. That's number one. Because the fitan are so great, just like the reward is so great, also the risk is so great. Like in business. Very profitable business is usually a very risky business. So there's a probability of making a lot of money, but there's also a chance of losing a lot of money. So you can make a lot of ajr, but also if you make a mistake, these mistakes could be fatal. The second element that you need is tadhiyah, the willingness to sacrifice. You have to be prepared to sacrifice whatever is needed. It could be your life, your time, your money, your family. It could even be the Islamic group or brothers that you are with. It could be the scholars that you love. Anything is possible. You don't know what will happen. Because those are times when there could be a person who is a believer in the morning, kafir at night. Goes to bed as a Muslim, wakes up in the morning as a mushrik. So take nothing for granted. You have to have the willingness to sacrifice whatever Allah wants from you. Think of yourself as a worker for the sake of Allah. You're going to do the work and leave the results on Allah. And whatever your Lord wants from you, you're willing to give it. The reason why I'm saying it's not only sometimes worldly sacrifice in terms of life, money and time. Your Shaykh, whoever that Shaykh might be on the wrong side. Are you going to follow? Or are you going to follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said? So what you would need in those days is light in order to see your path in the darkness. Rasulullah ﷺ says, fitan ka qita' al-layl mudlim. Rasulullah described it as fitan, like dark pieces of the night. So the fitna is so dark you cannot see. How can you walk? How can you travel? You must have light in your heart to guide you. And the way you develop that light in your heart is by building up your iman today. Because there will be a lot of deception. That is fitna. Otherwise, why is it called fitna? إِذَا أَقْبَلَتْ اشْتَبَهَتْ وَإِذَا أَدْبَرَتْ أَسْفَرَتْ. When the fitna is coming, it is very obscure, foggy. And when it leaves, it clears up. But it's too late. It's already left. It's already behind you. But when it's coming, it's very obscure. You can't see. Therefore, you have to have light inside your heart. Nur from Allah. So, brothers and sisters, get ready. Prepare yourself. Don't take anything for granted. Don't live this daily routine. Prepare yourselves spiritually, most importantly, for what is coming. Because even if you are not going to witness these events, today is a time when the Ummah is in the center stage. So whatever is happening in the world will influence us and affect us one way or another. And you have to be willing to walk that road alone. I mean, situations could occur when no one around you is willing to walk that path. You have to have the determination and the ability to walk alone. And when we talk about preparation aforetime, ahead of the fitna, I give the example of Siyam. You have to have sahur before Fajr. When the Muaddin says Allahu Akbar, that's it. So if you didn't already have sahur before the fitna starts, you're going to become quite hungry then. So have your sahur now and don't wait until the sun rises. Allah Azza wa Jalla says in Quran, يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ نَفْسٌ إِيمَانُهَا لَمْ تَكُنْ آمَنَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِ أَوْ كَسَبَتْ فِي إِيمَانِهَا خَيْرًا. In the times of these fitan, if you don't already have iman, you cannot build it up then. You have to walk into the test with iman, because it's too late to develop it then. So have your sahur right now. Don't wait until tomorrow.
This film is about the punishment of a whole nation, the killing of hundreds of thousands of people, many of them young children. These are the people of Iraq, the silent victims not only of Saddam Hussein, their dictator, but of an endless war against civilians waged by Western governments.
I have said to the people of Iraq that our quarrel was not with them, but instead with their leadership, and above all with Saddam Hussein. You, the people of Iraq, are not our enemy. We do not seek your destruction.
Our foreign policy must have an ethical dimension and must support the demands of other peoples for the democratic rights on which we insist for ourselves.
Our quarrel is not with the Iraqi people. It never has been.
What the crime the Iraqi children were done to receive this punishment? What a crime.